The boardroom smelled of leather and ambition. Elena Rivera felt the weight of 40 eyes on her back as she approached the glass table, her fingers trembling around the tablet she'd been told to carry. They thought she was an assistant. They'd made that clear the moment she walked through the double doors of Meridian Tower, directing her to the service entrance, asking her to fetch coffee, laughing when she'd mentioned having a seat at the table. She didn't correct them. Not yet. The man at the head of the table, silver-haired, sharp-suited, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, snapped his fingers without looking at her.
You, girl.
We need these documents copied before the CEO arrives. 20 sets. And tell whoever sent you that we don't have time for incompetence today. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Around the table, executives from Parallax Industries leaned back in their chairs, smirking, already counting the $800 million they thought they'd secured. The merger documents sat in neat stacks, waiting for signatures that would reshape the tech industry. Waiting for her. Of course, she said softly, taking the papers. Her voice didn't shake. She'd learned long ago how to hide earthquakes beneath still water. The silver-haired man, Richard Ashford, Parallax's chief of operations, turned to his colleagues. This is what happens when you hire from the bottom of the barrel. Novice tech must be desperate. Laughter rippled through the room like poison. Hello, everyone watching from around the world, whether you're in New York, London, Mumbai, or somewhere in between, thank you for being here. I hope you're having an incredible day. If you enjoy stories about justice, power, and people who underestimate the wrong person, you're going to want to stay until the end of this one. And hey, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Elena walked toward the door, documents clutched to her chest, her heels clicking against marble. She could feel him watching her. The man by the window, tall, dark-haired, with eyes the color of storm clouds and a stillness that made everyone else in the room seem frantic. He hadn't laughed, hadn't smiled, just watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. She'd noticed him the moment she entered, impossible not to. While others postured and preened, he stood apart, observing everything with the careful attention of someone who missed nothing. His tailored charcoal suit fit him like armor, and when their eyes met for a fraction of a second, she felt something shift in her chest. Recognition, maybe. Or warning. But he said nothing. Did nothing. And somehow that felt like the deepest cut of all. Elena pushed through the door, letting it whisper shut behind her. Her reflection caught in the polished wall, dark eyes burning with something between fury and anticipation, her black suit immaculate despite their attempts to diminish her. She looked down at the documents in her hands. They had no idea who she was. And in exactly 12 minutes, that ignorance would cost them everything. The question was, would she let them burn, or would she show mercy? She smiled, and it wasn't kind. 6 months earlier, Elena Rivera had stood in a very different boardroom, watching her father's life's work crumble. I'm sorry, Ms. Rivera. The board has made its decision. The lawyer's voice had been clinically sympathetic, the way doctors sounded when they delivered terminal diagnoses. Your father's shares will be redistributed according to the contingency clauses. Unless you can demonstrate sufficient experience and capital to maintain controlling interest, Novice Tech will be absorbed by Parallax Industries. She'd been 29 then, fresh from leading a successful AI division in Silicon Valley, with a reputation for turning failing products into market leaders. But to the old guard at Novice Tech, her father's former partners, now vultures circling the inheritance, she was just Julian Rivera's daughter. Pretty, educated, ambitious. Not a real threat. How much time do I have? She'd asked. 6 months. Prove you can secure Novice's future, or lose everything. Her father had built Novice Tech from nothing, pioneering sustainable energy solutions that powered half the eastern seaboard. Then the stroke had come, sudden and devastating, leaving him unable to speak or sign documents. The company he'd protected with every breath began to slip through his paralyzed fingers. Elena had made a promise at his bedside, holding his hand while machines beeped their mechanical lullaby. I'll save it, Papa. I swear. She'd spent 6 months working in secret, operating through lawyers and proxy votes, rebuilding Novice from the inside while pretending to be just another junior executive learning the ropes. She'd identified the rot: embezzlement, corporate espionage, executives selling patents to competitors. She'd documented everything, built alliances with younger staff members who shared her vision, and positioned herself for a hostile takeover of her own inheritance. But she needed capital. Lots of it. And that meant approaching the one company with enough resources to make the play work: Parallax Industries. The merger was supposed to save Novice Tech. It was supposed to be her triumph. She hadn't expected them to treat her like the help. Now, standing in Meridian Tower's executive hallway, Elena checked her watch. 11 minutes. She could hear voices through the door, Richard Ashford holding court, explaining how they'd got Novice Tech for parts the moment the ink dried. How they'd been playing the Rivera girl for months, letting her think she had a say in anything. She actually believed we'd honor her father's legacy, Richard said, and the laughter was cruel. The moment those papers are signed, Julian Rivera's name disappears from the industry. Should have happened years ago. Elena's hand tightened on the documents. Her father had trusted these people once, had considered Richard Ashford a friend. The betrayal tasted like copper on her tongue. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nina, her assistant, and one of 3 people who knew the truth. Everything's ready. The board is assembled. Say the word. Elena typed back. 10 minutes. Another buzz. This one from an unknown number. Don't sign anything. You're walking into a trap. A friend. She stared at the message, ice sliding down her spine. Who knew she was here?
Who knew what she planned?
She'd been so careful, keeping her true position secret, using shell companies and intermediaries to hide her controlling shares in Novice Tech. The merger documents listed her only as the Rivera representative, deliberately vague. But someone knew more than they should. The door opened. The man from the window emerged, and this close, Elena could see the sharp angles of his face, the intelligence burning in those gray eyes, the way he moved like someone comfortable with power. He looked at her, and for a moment, the hallway felt smaller, the air thicker. You should leave, he said quietly. His voice was deep, controlled, with an edge of something she couldn't identify.
Concern?
Warning? Before they realize what you're about to do. Elena's breath caught. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of cedarwood and rain. You're not an assistant. You're not even just a representative. You're Elena Rivera, and you own 62% of Novice Tech shares through a series of strategic acquisitions and your father's trust. You restructured the company over 6 months, fired the corrupt executives, and positioned yourself for this exact moment. His lips curved slightly. And you're about to walk back into that room and destroy Richard Ashford's entire plan. Her heart stopped. Started again too fast. Who are you? Someone who's been watching Parallax make enemies for a long time. He handed her a slim folder. You'll need this. Consider it insurance. Why are you helping me? Something flickered in his expression. Dark, complicated, almost painful. Because Richard Ashford destroyed my family's company 5 years ago. Used the same tactics he's planning to use on Novice. I've been waiting for someone with the leverage to stop him. He paused. And because you remind me that not everyone in this industry is a shark. Elena opened the folder. Inside were financial records, emails, proof of fraud dating back years. Evidence that would bury Parallax in lawsuits. This is dangerous, he finished. Use it carefully. And don't trust anyone at that table. Not even you? His smile was sad. Especially not me. I have my own agenda. He turned to leave, then stopped. My name is Dante. Dante Carver. When this is over and you've won, because you will win, find me. We should talk about what comes next. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with a folder that changed everything and a name that echoed in her chest like a drumbeat. Dante Carver. She knew that name. His family had owned Carver Technologies, a pioneering firm in renewable energy that had mysteriously collapsed after a Parallax acquisition. The scandal had made headlines, though the details had been buried in legal settlements. If he was here, working with Parallax.
The door opened again.
Richard Ashford stood in the threshold, impatience carved into his features. Are you actually going to get those copies? Or do we need to replace you before the meeting starts? Elena looked at him, really looked at him, saw the arrogance, the cruelty, the absolute certainty that he'd already won. Behind him, through the doorway, she could see the other executives checking their phones, drinking coffee, preparing to sign away her father's legacy. 8 minutes until showtime. Actually, Elena said, her voice steady as steel, I think we should start the meeting now. The CEO just arrived. Richard frowned. The CEO? She's not due for another 10. Understanding crashed over his face like cold water.
No.
You're not. Elena Rivera. She extended her hand, which he didn't take. CEO of Novice Tech majority shareholder. And the person who's about to save you all a very embarrassing afternoon. The color drained from his face. That's impossible. We were told. You were told what I wanted you to hear. She walked past him into the boardroom, and this time when she entered, every head turned. The energy shifted, confusion rippling through the crowd. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for your patience. Shall we discuss this merger? Richard grabbed her arm. His grip was tight enough to bruise. You think you're clever? You think this changes anything? His voice dropped to a hiss. You're out of your depth, little girl. Sign the documents, or I'll make sure Novice Tech doesn't survive the week. Elena looked at his hand on her arm, looked back at his face, and smiled. Take your hand off me, or I'll have security remove you from my negotiation. Your negotiation? He laughed, but it sounded uncertain now. This is Parallax Tower. My territory. Actually, said a new voice from the doorway, this is a neutral venue, as specified in the merger agreement. And Ms. Rivera is well within her rights to be here. Dante stood in the entrance, his expression unreadable. But he wasn't looking at Elena. He was looking at Richard with something close to hatred burning in his eyes. Carver, Richard spat. I should have known you'd be involved in this. Still bitter about your family's little company. Not bitter. Dante's voice was ice. Patient. And I believe Ms. Rivera has the floor. Elena felt the shift in power like a physical thing. She pulled her arm free from Richard's grip and walked to the head of the table, setting down her tablet and the folder Dante had given her. Let's talk about what Parallax Industries has really been doing for the last 5 years. And then we'll discuss whether this merger happens at all. The room exploded into chaos, but Elena was already 3 steps ahead, watching Richard Ashford's carefully constructed empire begin to crack. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered why Dante Carver's presence felt both like salvation and like standing on the edge of a knife. The presentation took 40 minutes. Elena walked them through every fraudulent acquisition, every buried lawsuit, every company Parallax had destroyed through corporate espionage and market manipulation. She displayed the documents on the room's massive screens, emails, financial transfers, testimony from whistleblowers Dante had spent years cultivating. Richard tried to interrupt 3 times. Each time, Elena simply spoke over him, her voice calm and relentless as a tide. This is slander, he finally shouted, slamming his hand on the table. You have no proof that would hold up in court. Actually, I have enough proof to trigger SEC investigations, shareholder lawsuits, and criminal fraud charges, Elena replied. Which is why we're going to renegotiate. Novice Tech will not be absorbed by Parallax. Instead, Parallax will become a subsidiary of Novice Tech, pending full financial audit and restructuring. You'll retain your position as COO, but every decision goes through me. And the first decision I'll make is installing independent oversight to ensure what you did to Carver Technologies and a dozen other companies never happens again. The Parallax executives erupted in protests, but Elena noticed several of them eyeing Richard with dawning suspicion. She'd planted seeds of doubt, shown them their leader was a liability. Now she just had to wait for the garden to burn. Richard stood, his face purple with rage. You arrogant little. Careful, Dante said quietly from his position by the window. He'd been silent throughout the presentation, but now he moved forward, every step measured. You're speaking to the woman who just prevented you from committing securities fraud. I'd suggest gratitude. Gratitude? Richard turned on him. You're fired, Carver. Effective immediately. I should never have hired you in the first place, but I wanted to watch you grovel after we destroyed your father's company. Turns out you were just a snake waiting to bite. I quit 3 days ago, Dante said. I've been documenting Parallax's activities from the inside for 5 years, waiting for the right moment to move. Ms. Rivera provided that moment. He looked at Elena, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Though I didn't expect her to be quite so devastating. The compliment landed in her chest like a physical thing, warm, unexpected, dangerous. One of the Parallax executives, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, spoke up. Richard, is any of this true? Did you fabricate the Carver Technologies collapse? Of course not, Richard snapped. Carver couldn't compete, and his family's company failed. That's not my fault. Actually, Dante said, pulling out his phone, I have recordings of you orchestrating the patent theft that bankrupted us, along with testimony from 3 of your former employees who've agreed to cooperate with federal investigators. He looked at Richard with cold satisfaction. My father had a heart attack when the company collapsed. Died 3 months later. I've been waiting 5 years to return the favor. The room went silent. Elena felt the pieces clicking into place. Dante's agenda, his presence at Parallax, his willingness to help her. This wasn't just about justice. It was personal. It was revenge. And she'd just become his instrument. Richard seemed to age a decade in seconds. He looked around the table, seeing the judgment in his colleagues' faces, the calculations happening behind their eyes. He was finished and he knew it. This isn't over, he said quietly, dangerously. You both think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started. I have allies, resources, connections that go deeper than you can imagine. By tomorrow, Elena Rivera, your father's company will be dismantled, your reputation destroyed, and you'll wish you'd just taken the deal I offered. Is that a threat? Elena asked. It's a promise. He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. Enjoy your victory while it lasts. It won't. After he left, the remaining executives looked at each other, then at Elena. The older woman who'd spoken earlier stood. Ms. Rivera, I'm Catherine Mills, Parallax's CFO. If what you've shown us is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt it, then we need to discuss transition terms immediately. I think I speak for everyone here when I say we'd rather work with you than face the legal consequences of Richard's actions. Elena nodded, relief and triumph mixing in her veins. I'm open to that conversation. But it happens with full transparency and with independent auditors present. Agreed. Catherine looked at Dante. Mr. Carver, I owe you an apology. What happened to your family's company was criminal. If you're willing to work with us to correct these wrongs, I'd welcome your input. Dante's expression softened slightly. I appreciate that, Ms. Mills. We'll see. The meeting broke up quickly after that, executives filing out to make urgent phone calls, reassess their positions, distance themselves from Richard's impending implosion. Within 20 minutes, the boardroom was empty except for Elena and Dante. She should have felt victorious. She'd saved her father's company, prevented a corporate massacre, exposed corruption that had gone unchecked for years. But standing in the empty room with Dante, all she felt was complicated. You used me, she said quietly. He didn't deny it. I gave you information you needed. You chose what to do with it. You knew I'd come here. You knew exactly how to push Richard into revealing himself. This whole thing was orchestrated. She turned to face him, anger and something else, hurt, maybe, flickering in her chest. Was any of it real? The warning in the hallway, the concern? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved closer, and Elena's breath hitched despite herself. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of exhaustion, the weight he carried like stones in his pockets. My father died believing he'd failed, Dante said softly. Believing the company he built was worthless, that he'd let down everyone who depended on him. Richard Ashford did that. Took a good man and broke him for profit.
His jaw tightened.
So yes, I used to. I've been positioning pieces for years, waiting for someone with enough power and moral courage to actually challenge Parallax. When I heard about your situation with Novice Tech, I saw an opportunity. And the warning?
Elena said.
Telling me to leave before they realized what I was doing? That was real. He looked at her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her feel exposed, vulnerable. Because somewhere between planning revenge and executing it, I realized you weren't just a chess piece. You're someone who genuinely cares about protecting what her father built. Someone willing to fight even when outmatched. And I. He stopped, seeming to catch himself. I didn't want you to get hurt in the crossfire. Elena's heart hammered. I can take care of myself. I know. A ghost of a smile. You proved that spectacularly. But that doesn't mean I didn't worry. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Elena knew she should step back, maintain professional distance, remember that this man had admitted to manipulating her. But she couldn't stop thinking about the sadness in his eyes when he'd mentioned his father, the careful way he'd protected her identity in the hallway, the fact that he'd spent 5 years building a case instead of just walking away. What happens now? She asked. Now you save your father's company. Rebuild Novice Tech the right way. And I. He trailed off, looking away. I figure out what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life, now that revenge isn't consuming it. Before Elena could respond, her phone rang. Nina's name flashed on the screen. She answered. Tell me good news. Richard Ashford just held a press conference, Nina said, her voice tight with worry. He's claiming you forged documents, that the evidence against Parallax is fabricated, and that you're engaging in corporate espionage to cover up Novice Tech's financial insolvency. He's filed a lawsuit and requested an emergency injunction to freeze all your company's assets. The triumph in Elena's chest turned to ice. He can't do that. We have proof. He's claiming the proof is doctored. And he's got 3 judges in his pocket and enough media connections to bury us before anyone investigates. Nina paused. Elena, it's bad. Really bad. The market's already reacting. Novice Tech stock is dropping. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the victory she'd claimed slipping away. Richard hadn't been bluffing. He'd just been waiting for the right moment to strike back. Get our lawyers on it, she said finally. And prepare a counterstatement. We're not backing down. She hung up and looked at Dante, who'd clearly heard everything. He's coming after me. After Novice. Of course he is. Dante's expression was grim. Richard doesn't lose. He just changes the battlefield. Can we beat him? Honestly, I don't know. He moved to the window, staring out at the city sprawling below. He's had decades to build his network. Judges, politicians, media executives, they're all in his pocket. Even with evidence, he can delay investigations, control narratives, make you look like the villain while he plays the victim. Elena felt panic rising, cold and suffocating. She'd thought she'd won. Thought she'd saved her father's company. But she'd only triggered the real war. There has to be something, she said. Some way to stop him before he destroys everything. Dante turned back to her, and in his eyes, she saw calculation mixed with something almost like regret. There is. But you're not going to like it. Tell me. We get married. Elena stared at him. What? Richard's attack relies on painting you as an unstable, desperate executive making reckless accusations. But if you're aligned with me, the son of one of his previous victims, someone with credibility in the industry, it changes the narrative. Makes his attacks look like retaliation. Plus, merging our resources gives us enough combined power to withstand his legal assault. You're insane, Elena breathed. We barely know each other. I know. Dante stepped closer, his expression intense. But I also know Richard Ashford won't stop until you're destroyed. He'll spend millions, use every dirty trick in the book, and he won't care who gets hurt in the process. Including your father. He paused. This is the only play that changes the game fast enough to matter. Elena's mind raced. Marriage. To a man she'd met hours ago. A man who'd admitted to using her for revenge. It was absurd, reckless, impossible. It was also the only idea that made strategic sense. "If I agree," she said slowly, "this is a business arrangement. Nothing more." Something flickered in Dante's expression. Disappointment, maybe, but he nodded. "Of course. Purely strategic. We can dissolve it once Richard's neutralized." Elena looked at him, at this infuriating, complicated man who'd walked into her life like a storm and turned everything sideways. She thought about her father, lying in a hospital bed, trusting her to save what he'd built. Thought about the employees depending on novice tech for their livelihoods, the innovations that would die if Richard won. "Fine," she said. "But we do this my way. Full transparency, clear boundaries, and the second Richard's defeated, we end this." Dante extended his hand.
Deal.
Elena took it, and the moment their palms touched, electricity raced up her arm. She told herself it was just adrenaline, just the intensity of the situation. But when their eyes met, she saw her own confusion reflected in his gaze, and wondered if they'd just made a terrible mistake. Or something inevitable. If you're still watching, thank you, I promise. Things are about to get even more intense. Drop comment and let me know. Would you have agreed to Dante's plan? And make sure you're subscribed, because the next twist is going to change everything you think you know. The wedding happened 72 hours later in a judge's chambers with Nina and Dante's lawyer as witnesses. Elena wore a navy suit and felt like she was signing away more than just her legal status. Dante's hand was warm when he slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple platinum band that somehow felt heavier than it should. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the judge said, bored, already thinking about his next appointment. Dante didn't kiss her. They'd agreed, professional only, no unnecessary intimacy. But when his fingers lingered on hers for a fraction of a second too long, Elena felt heat pool in her stomach and wondered how she was supposed to maintain distance from someone she now legally belonged to. The media reaction was explosive. By the time they left the courthouse, reporters had gathered like ravens, shouting questions about the whirlwind romance, the merger, Richard Ashford's accusations. Dante put his arm around Elena's waist, for the cameras, she told herself, and she leaned into him because it would look strange not to. He smelled like cedarwood and something darker, more complex. She hated how safe she felt tucked against his side. "Mr. Carver, is it true you're using this marriage to exact revenge on Parallax Industries?" A reporter shouted. "It's true I'm using this marriage to protect my wife from predatory business practices," Dante replied smoothly. "As for revenge, I prefer to call it justice." "Ms. Rivera, are you aware of allegations that your husband was involved in corporate espionage?"
Elena smiled.
"I'm aware my husband spent years documenting fraud and corruption. If that's espionage, we need more of it." They climbed into Dante's car, a sleek black Tesla that whispered rather than roared, and didn't speak until they were blocks away. Then Elena pulled off the ring and set it on the dashboard. "What are you doing?" Dante asked. "I only wear it in public," she said. That was the deal. He was quiet for a moment. "Of course." But his hand tightened on the steering wheel, and Elena wondered if she'd hurt him somehow. They drove to Elena's apartment, a modern loft overlooking the river that she'd bought with her first real paycheck. Nina was waiting inside with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. "Well," Nina said, looking between them, "how does it feel to be Mrs. Carver?" "Tactical," Elena replied, kicking off her heels. "And temporary." Nina gave her a look that said we'll talk about this later, and turned to Dante. "I've prepared the guest room. Unless you too." "Guest room is perfect," Dante said quickly.
Too quickly.
Elena poured wine and tried not to think about the fact that she was now living with a man who made her pulse race and her judgment fail. They ate in awkward silence, making small talk about the weather, the stock market, anything but the elephant in the room. Finally, Nina left, citing an early morning meeting. Elena suspected she just wanted to give them space, which was ridiculous because there was nothing to give space to. This was business. Strategic. Temporary. So, why did her apartment feel smaller with Dante in it? Why did she keep noticing the way candlelight caught in his eyes, turning gray to silver. I should review tomorrow's schedule, Elena said, standing abruptly. Nina set up a joint press conference to announce our consolidated corporate strategy.
Elena.
Dante stood too, and suddenly they were very close in the small kitchen. Can I ask you something?
What?
Why did you really agree to this? His voice was soft, searching. You could have found other ways to fight Richard. You're smart enough, connected enough. But you said yes in about 30 seconds. Why? Elena looked away, uncomfortable with the question, with his proximity, with the way her heart hammered. You said it yourself. He won't stop until I'm destroyed. This was the fastest solution. That's the tactical answer. He lifted her chin gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. I want the real one. She should step back. Should maintain boundaries. Should remember this was fake, strategic, temporary. But standing there with his fingers warm against her skin, Elena felt something crack in her carefully constructed armor. Because I'm tired of being alone, she whispered. Because for 6 months I've been fighting this battle by myself, and when you offered to stand beside me, even for pretend reasons, it felt like... She stopped, horrified at what she'd almost revealed. Like what? Dante prompted. Like I could breathe again. The admission cost her.
Stupid, right?
Getting emotional about a business arrangement. Dante's thumb brushed her cheek, featherlight. Not stupid. Human. He smiled, sad and sweet. For what it's worth, when you said yes, I felt the same thing. Like maybe I wasn't just a revenge plot with legs. Like I could be something else. Someone else. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. Elena could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the rise and fall of his chest, smell the wine on his breath. It would be so easy to close the distance, to taste what his lips felt like, to forget this was supposed to be temporary. But if she kissed him now, everything would change. The boundaries they'd drawn would shatter. And she wasn't ready for that complication, that vulnerability, that risk. She stepped back. I should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense. Disappointment flickered across Dante's face, quickly masked. Of course. Good night. She retreated to her bedroom and closed the door, then stood with her back against it, breathing hard. This was a mistake. The marriage, the proximity, the feelings already tangling in her chest like vines. She should have found another way. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the way Dante had looked at her in the kitchen, like she was precious, important, real, and she knew with terrifying certainty that this fake marriage might destroy her more thoroughly than Richard Ashford ever could. The press conference was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Elena and Dante presented a united front, announcing the formation of Rivera Carver Industries, a new conglomerate dedicated to ethical business practices and technological innovation. They fielded questions about the merger, their relationship, their plans for both novice tech and the remnants of Carver technologies they'd quietly been acquiring. Richard Ashford watched from the back of the room, his expression murderous. Afterward, as Elena and Dante left the building, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Richard's face. Congratulations on your wedding, he said, voice dripping with venom. I hope you enjoy it while it lasts. Was that a threat? Dante asked coldly. A prediction. Richard smiled. You think you've beaten me? You've just painted targets on your backs. Both of you. I've spent 20 years building my empire. Your children playing dress-up. And when I'm done, you'll beg me to let you walk away with nothing. The window rolled up. The SUV drove away. Elena felt ice in her veins. Beside her, Dante's jaw was tight with rage. He's going to come at us hard, she said quietly. Let him. Dante took her hand. For appearance, she reminded herself, though it didn't feel that way. We're ready. But they weren't ready for what came next. 3 days later, Elena received a package at her office. Inside was a flash drive and a note. Thought you should know who you married.
Era.
She plugged it in with shaking hands. The screen filled with videos, documents, emails. And as she read, her world collapsed. Dante Carver had been planning this for longer than 5 years. He'd infiltrated Parallax specifically to get close to Richard, but his endgame wasn't just revenge. It was acquisition. He'd been systematically positioning himself to absorb both Parallax and Novice Tech, using Elena's situation as a catalyst. The marriage wasn't just strategic. It gave him legal access to her company, her assets, her father's life's work. There were emails to anonymous investors discussing leveraging the Rivera merger for maximum asset consolidation. Messages outlining how he'd handled the emotional angle to ensure cooperation. Plans to dissolve the marriage once he'd secured controlling interests in both companies. Elena felt sick. Used. Stupid for believing, even for a moment, that the tenderness in his eyes had been real. The office door opened. Dante walked in, smiling. "Hey, I thought we could grab lunch." He stopped, seeing her expression. "What's wrong? Did you marry me to steal my company?" Her voice was remarkably steady. His face went pale. "Elena, whatever you've heard. It's not what I heard. It's what I saw." She gestured to the screen. "Your emails. Your plans. This whole thing was just another corporate takeover, wasn't it? I was just another target."
No.
"No, it's not like that. Those emails are from before I knew you." Before, he reached for her, but she jerked away. "Before what?" "Before you decided seduction would work better than intimidation." Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "God, I'm such an idiot. I actually believed you cared. That this meant something." "It does mean something." Dante's voice cracked. "Yes, I came here with an agenda. Yes, I plan to use the situation to rebuild my family's company. But Elena, everything changed when I met you. The way you fought for your father, the way you refused to be diminished, the way you—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair, frustration and pain warring on his face. "I fell for you.
Completely. Terrifyingly.
And every day since has been me trying to figure out how to tell you the truth without losing you." "Well, congratulations." Elena's laugh was bitter. "You lost me anyway." "Elena, please. Get out." Her voice was cold now, frozen over. "Get out of my office. Get out of my company. Get out of my life. I'll have divorce papers drawn up by end of day." "I'm not leaving." Dante's voice turned desperate. "I know I lied. I know I hurt you. But walking away now means Richard wins. He sent you that drive. He wants us divided." Maybe Richard's right. Maybe I should be more grateful that someone showed me who you really are before you could finish destroying me. She stood, hands braced on the desk. "You want to know the worst part? I was starting to trust you. Starting to think maybe this arrangement could become something real. But you were just playing a long game, and I was too blinded by—" She caught herself, refusing to finish that sentence. "By what?" Dante demanded, moving closer. "Say it, Elena. Tell me what you felt." "It doesn't matter what I felt." The words exploded from her. "Because it was all based on lies." "Not all of it." His eyes blazed. "The way I looked at you in that kitchen, that was real. The way my hands shook when I put that ring on your finger, real. The fact that I lie awake at night in that guest room knowing you're 20 feet away and I can't touch you, can't hold you, can't tell you that you're the first thing I think about when I wake up. That's real, Elena. All of it." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. It physically hurt. But the evidence was right there on her screen, cold and damning. "I need time," she said finally. "Time to think. Time to figure out what's true and what's manipulation." "How much time?" "I don't know. But until I decide, we maintain appearances in public, but nothing more. You sleep in the guest room. We don't talk unless it's about business. And you don't," her voice broke slightly. "You don't look at me like that anymore. Like I matter." Pain crossed Dante's face, sharp and deep. "You do matter. More than anything." "Then prove it. Give me space. Respect my boundaries. And maybe I'll find a way to forgive you." She turned away, unable to bear looking at him anymore. "Please leave." She heard him walk to the door. Heard him pause. "For what it's worth," Dante said quietly, "I never meant to fall in love with you. It wasn't part of any plan. It just happened. And it's the only real thing I've felt in 5 years. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with emails that proved he'd betrayed her and a heart that insisted he hadn't. She put her head in her hands and finally let the tears come. The next 2 weeks were torture. Elena and Dante maintained their public facade. Perfect power couple, united front, strategic brilliance. They attended galas, gave interviews, smiled for cameras. In private, they barely spoke. Dante honored her request for space, but she could feel his eyes on her constantly, heavy with unspoken words. Richard escalated his attacks. He leaked false financial documents, suggesting Novice Tech was insolvent. He planted stories about Elena's instability and questionable marriage. He filed lawsuit after lawsuit, each designed to drain resources and attention. But he also made a mistake. Elena was working late when Nina burst into her office, laptop in hand. "You need to see this. I was going through the metadata on that flash drive Richard sent you." She pulled up a file analysis. "The dates are wrong. Those emails allegedly from Dante? They've been doctored. Someone took real emails from years ago and altered them, adding your name and Novice Tech references." Elena's heart stopped. "What?" "It's a forgery. A good one, but forensics don't lie." Nina pulled up side-by-side comparisons. "See here? The font rendering is inconsistent. And here, the IP addresses don't match Dante's known devices. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make you think your husband was playing you." Elena stared at the screen, ice and fire warring in her chest. "Richard. Has to be. He knew exactly which buttons to push to divide you two." Nina closed the laptop. "Elena, I know you've been hurting. But maybe you should talk to Dante. Really talk to him." She found him on the apartment balcony at midnight, staring at the city lights. He didn't turn when she approached, though she knew he'd heard her. "You were right," Elena said quietly. "Richard sent those emails. They were fake." Dante's shoulders tensed, but he remained silent. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate. "I should have trusted you. Should have at least let you explain before you gutted me?" He turned, and the pain in his eyes made her breath catch. "You had every right to doubt me, Elena. I did lie to you. Maybe not about how I feel, but about my original intentions. I gave you reason not to trust me. But I should have known." She stepped closer. "Should have seen that you're not Richard. That you're not the kind of man who uses people and throws them away." Another step. "Should have remembered that you spent 5 years building a case against corruption instead of just walking away. That you warned me in that hallway even though it might have compromised your plans. That you look at me like I'm—" She stopped, afraid to say it. "Like you're everything," Dante finished, his voice rough. "Because you are Elena. Somewhere between plotting revenge and executing it, you became my entire world." The distance between them evaporated. Elena reached up, touching his face, feeling the stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "I was starting to fall for you," she whispered. "And it terrified me. Because falling means vulnerability, and vulnerability means someone can hurt you. And I've been hurt enough." Dante covered her hand with his. "I know. God, I know. And I'd do anything to take back the lies, the manipulation, all of it. But I can't. All I can do is promise you that from this moment forward, I'm completely, brutally honest. Even when it costs me." "Then be honest now." Elena's pulse raced. "This marriage, is it still just strategic for you?"
No.
The word was immediate, certain. "It stopped being strategic the moment you smiled at me in that boardroom, and I realized you were the most formidable person I'd ever met. It stopped being temporary when you trusted me enough to say yes. And it stopped being fake when I kissed you in my mind about 1,000 times while lying in that guest room, hating myself for wanting something I had no right to want." Elena's breath shuddered. "What do you want, Dante?" "You." His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "I want you in every way possible. As my wife, my partner, my best friend. I want to wake up next to you and know it's real. Want to build something with you that isn't about revenge or strategy or corporate warfare. I want He leaned his forehead against hers. I want to deserve you, and I'm terrified I never will. You don't have to deserve me, Elena whispered. You just have to love me. Honestly. Completely. Then I've been doing that since day one. His lips hovered a breath from hers. Can I kiss you?
Please.
I've been dying to kiss you. Instead of answering, Elena closed the final distance. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined. It wasn't tentative or careful. It was desperate, hungry, 5 years of his pain and 6 months of hers crashing together in a wave of need. His hands slid into her hair, and she gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, closer, never close enough. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said, voice shaking. I love you so much it scares me. Good. Elena smiled against his lips. Because I love you too. And now we're going to finish what we started. Together. Really together. Destroying Richard Ashford? Among other things. She kissed him again, softer this time, sweeter. But first, you're moving out of the guest room. Dante laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. Yes, ma'am. They stood on the balcony for a long time, wrapped in each other, the city glittering below them like scattered diamonds. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Elena felt complete. But in his office across town, Richard Ashford smiled at his phone, reading a text from an unknown source. Phase 2 ready. They'll never see it coming. The war was far from over. The next morning, Elena woke up in Dante's arms and thought maybe happiness wasn't such a dangerous thing after all. They made breakfast together, stealing kisses between coffee and scrambled eggs, laughing at nothing, rediscovering each other without walls between them. Then Nina called. Turn on the news.
Now.
Elena grabbed the remote. Every channel showed the same thing. Federal agents raiding Rivera Carver Industries headquarters. The ticker scrolled accusations, fraud, embezzlement, racketeering. And there, in handcuffs being led from the building, was Catherine Mills, the Parallax CFO who'd sided with them. This is Richard, Dante said, voice tight with fury. He's setting us up. Elena's phone rang. An unknown number. She answered. Hello. Good morning, Mrs. Carver. Richard's voice was silk over steel. I do hope you're watching the news. Catherine Mills has been arrested for crimes she claims you and your husband orchestrated. She's very convincing. The evidence is overwhelming. And by the time the feds are done investigating, they'll be coming for you next. You framed her, Elena said, cold rage building in her chest. I created a narrative, Richard corrected. One that paints you and Dante as the real villains. 2 vengeful entrepreneurs who fabricated evidence against Parallax to cover your own criminal activities. Catherine was collateral damage. Unfortunate, but necessary. We'll fight this. We have proof. Proof I've already discredited through proper channels. By tomorrow, every piece of evidence you collected will be deemed inadmissible. Tainted. Fabricated. He paused. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to dissolve Rivera Carver Industries. You're going to publicly apologize for your accusations against Parallax. You're going to sell me novice tech for $1. And if you do all of this within 48 hours, I'll make the investigation go away. Catherine will be released. Your reputations will be merely damaged, not destroyed. And if we refuse, then Catherine goes to prison for 20 years. The investigation expands to include your father's original business practices. I'm sure I can find something questionable if I look hard enough. Your marriage becomes evidence of conspiracy. And both you and Dante spend the next decade fighting federal charges that will bankrupt you, even if you eventually win. His voice turned gentle, mocking. You fought well, Ms. Rivera. But you're playing in a league you don't understand. Take the loss. Walk away while you still can. He hung up. Elena stood frozen, phone clutched in her hand, feeling the trap snap shut around them. They could fight, but fighting meant destroying Catherine Mills, ruining her father's legacy, potentially losing everything to legal fees and investigations. Richard had positioned himself perfectly. No matter which direction they moved, he won. There has to be a way out, Dante said, but he sounded uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. Elena's mind raced through scenarios, each one ending in defeat. Richard had learned from their previous confrontation. He'd built a trap with no exits. Unless we go to the media, she said suddenly. Not the mainstream media he controls. Underground journalists, podcasters, independent investigators. We release everything, the real evidence, the forensic proof your emails were doctored, the documentation of his frame-up. We make it so public, so widespread, that he can't control the narrative. That's scorched earth, Dante warned. We'd be burning every bridge in the industry. No one would want to work with us after. But we'd be free. Elena turned to him. And Catherine would be free. And every company Richard destroyed would finally get vindication. She grabbed his hands. I didn't come this far to surrender. Did you? Dante's smile was slow, fierce, proud. Not even close. They spent the next 24 hours in a frenzy of activity. Nina coordinated with independent journalists. Dante reached out to every whistleblower, every victim of Parallax's schemes. Elena compiled evidence with timestamps, forensic analyses, witness testimony. And then they dropped a bomb. The exposé went live simultaneously across 50 independent platforms. Video testimony from former Parallax employees. Financial records showing decades of fraud. Audio recordings of Richard threatening competitors. The doctored emails sent to Elena, with forensic proof of manipulation. Catherine Mills's actual role as an unwitting participant, framed to protect the real criminals. Within hours, it exploded across social media. #AshfordExposed trended worldwide. Major news outlets, unable to ignore the groundswell, began picking up the story. By evening, there were calls for congressional investigations. Richard tried to spin it, claimed the releases were criminal, that Elena and Dante were desperate. But the evidence was too comprehensive, too well documented, too corroborated by too many sources. The empire he'd built over 20 years cracked, then crumbled, then collapsed entirely. Federal agents arrested Richard Ashford 3 days later on charges of fraud, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. The charges against Catherine Mills were dropped. Parallax Industries declared bankruptcy, its assets frozen pending investigation. Elena watched the arrest on TV, Dante's arm around her shoulders, and felt, not triumph, exactly. More like exhaustion mixed with relief. They'd won, but the cost had been enormous. Her father's company was safe, but her reputation in traditional business circles was destroyed. They'd made powerful enemies. The road ahead would be difficult, but they'd be traveling it together. We did it, Dante said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. We survived, Elena corrected. Now we have to figure out what comes next. I have some ideas about that. He turned her to face him, suddenly serious. Elena Rivera Carver, will you marry me?
For real this time.
Not for strategy, not for corporate warfare. Just because I love you and I want to build a life with you that isn't defined by revenge or survival. Elena laughed, tears pricking her eyes. We're already married, you idiot. Legally. But I want the real thing. The wedding your father can attend. The vows we mean. The honeymoon that isn't interrupted by federal investigations. He smiled. What do you say? Yes. She kissed him, sweet and certain. Yes to all of it. To real marriages and actual honeymoons and building something beautiful instead of just fighting battles. To new beginnings, Dante murmured against her lips. To us, Elena whispered back. And in that moment, with the ruins of Richard Ashford's empire playing on the television and the future stretching out before them like an unwritten story, Elena finally understood what victory felt like. It felt like coming home. 6 months later, the venue was small, intimate, just close friends and family gathered in a garden overlooking the ocean. Julian Rivera sat in the front row, tears streaming down his weathered face as he watched his daughter walk down the aisle in a simple white dress. Physical therapy had given him back some mobility, enough to squeeze Elena's hand when she knelt beside him before the ceremony. "Proud of you, Mija," he whispered, voice still rough but present. "So proud." Dante waited at the altar, looking devastating in a charcoal suit, his eyes never leaving Elena as she approached. This time when they exchanged vows, every word was real, true, earned through fire and pain and choosing each other again and again. "I promise to be your partner in all things," Elena said, voice steady and clear. "To build with you, not just survive. To trust you, even when it's hard. To love you always." "I promise to deserve that trust," Dante replied, his hands warm around hers. "To protect what we're building without letting revenge consume us. To wake up every day grateful that you said yes both times." The crowd laughed softly. "And to love you with everything I have for the rest of my life." When they kissed, it felt like sealing a promise they'd been making all along. The reception was a celebration of survival, resilience, love. Nina gave a toast that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Catherine Mills, fully exonerated and now their chief operating officer, raised a glass to the most stubborn, brilliant, terrifying couple I've ever met. As the sun set and music played, Elena found herself on the beach with Dante, waves lapping at their feet. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked, leaning against him. "When you were plotting revenge 5 years ago, did you see this moment?" "Not even close." Dante wrapped his arms around her. "I imagined destroying Richard, reclaiming my family's legacy. But I never imagined finding you. Finding this." He turned her to face him, moonlight painting silver across her features. "You changed everything, Elena. You showed me there was more to life than revenge. That building something beautiful is better than tearing something down." "We did both," Elena pointed out. "Fair." He grinned. "But we built more than we destroyed. Rivera Carver Industries is changing how people think about ethical business. Your father's legacy is secure. And we—" he kissed her softly. "We have the rest of our lives to keep building." Elena kissed him back, tasting salt and champagne and promises kept. "I love you, Dante Carver. I love you, Elena Carver. My partner. My wife. My everything." They stood on that beach until stars filled the sky, two people who'd found each other in the middle of a war and chosen to build peace instead. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges and opportunities and moments they'd navigate together. Behind them, the party continued, laughter and music and joy. The sound of people who'd survived and chosen happiness. And in a federal prison 3 hours away, Richard Ashford sat in a cell, contemplating the destruction of a woman he'd underestimated. He'd forgotten the most important rule of warfare: never humiliate someone whose power you don't fully understand. It was a lesson that came too late. But for Elena and Dante, standing on the beach with the ocean singing its ancient song, lessons were behind them. Now there was only the future, bright, uncertain, theirs to create. Together, they walked back toward the celebration, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. The end. Thank you so much for staying with this story all the way to the end. Elena and Dante's journey proves that sometimes the biggest victories come not from revenge, but from having the courage to build something better. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in second chances and real justice, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. What was your favorite moment? What would you have done differently? And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Tales of power, love, resilience, and triumph against all odds. Your support means everything. Until next time, remember, never underestimate someone just because you don't know their full story. You never know when the person you're dismissing might just be the CEO.